Goldwyn. Thank you so much for taking time to speak with us today.
Sure, absolutely.
I have to tell you, I was really impressed because obviously you're playing Tom Brokaw. You know, he's an iconic news journalist in America. And I honestly, you were so convincing, I did not even realize it was you.
You're kidding.
No, I did not. I was
Well,
pretty impressed.
I'll take that as a compliment.
Yes, absolutely. Yes.
I haven't seen it yet, so I don't know how it turned out from my perspective. So, but
Well, you're wonderful. And convincingly, you really took on the persona of Tom Brokaw. How did you actually prepare to play him?
well, I spent a considerable amount of time listening to his books because he's written several books and he read them all, and that was great because that's very rich background material, and so I got to flavor of his life, who he is as a human being, how he evolved in his career. So I got a good flavor of who he was just temperamentally, and then I could, of course, listen to the way he spoke, his cadence, and how he emphasized certain things. His voice is much deeper than mine, so that took a long time to work down into that vocal register. And I'm not sure I was able to keep it all the time, but it was that was the challenge, was to get down to his. You know, he's got a very deep, rich voice, which is why he was so great as a broadcaster.
Right. Well, you have a very distinctive voice as well. So I totally noticed that you did lower your voice, which definitely really made the character even more believable. Do you actually remember back in 2001 when that was actually occurring?
Oh, of course,
Yes.
absolutely. And I even changed my travel plans. I was supposed to go back east to do, I think, some press for something, and I didn't go because I was warned that this thing was happening along the eastern seaboard, and that kind of everybody was a target. So that was back in the halcyon days of the analog world. Now, of course, you don't have to send white powder in an envelope to disrupt things. You can send some code and get it into somebody's phone or somebody's electric car or who knows where, and you could be just equally as disruptive. So we have to be mindful of that going
No,
forward.
absolutely. You know, and thinking back how scary that was then, and now with, like you said, everything's so digital, you can actually be a terrorist just from at home in your computer.
There are. So
I know.
it's happening as we speak.
What are you excited to see what Tom says about your performance?
Will he say something about my performance? I don't know. I don't know. I'd be terrified of that. In fact, yeah, I've never met Tom Brokaw. I was actually sitting right next to him, waiting to go to do a serious radio interview, and he was going to do another one somewhere. I almost reached over and said hello when they grabbed him and took him away. So I've never met him, but I did. I did see him. I was probably one of the first people to see Tom Brokaw as a newscaster because he came on in the '60s, I believe, at KNBC in Los Angeles. And I remember distinctly saying to my mother one day, and I couldn't have been more than 13 or 14, saying, "Look at this guy. He's really got something. This guy's different from the other newscasters." So I saw that he was going to become something back then when I was just a kid.
Wow, it's pretty prophetic. And who would know that you'd actually end up playing him in a
I
film?
know that's the weirdest thing because I've been a fan of his mind, ever since I could be conscious. So yeah, it's weird.
Well, I think you should be proud of your performance. I think that he would definitely be impressed.
Well, we'll see. I'm like I said, I'm a little suspect of that critique. That's the one critique I'm not. I'm going
Of
to be
course.
suspect of.
I think you did a great job. I think he will too.
Well, thank you.
Yes. And what did you take away from this whole film?
Well, I think that we need to be mindful of the things that are going on around us. I mean, and domestic terrorism was something because 9/11 had just happened, and we really the boogeyman for us was over in another continent somewhere, and they dressed differently, they spoke differently, all that, and all of a sudden, we had this thing happening on top of 9/11, and our first thought was, of course, this has to be an extension of what happened on 9/11. And then gradually we began to realize that no, this was kind of homegrown, and I think that it was. We see now that there's more a homegrown terrorism than we actually thought before,
Mhm.
and it can be more proliferate now that the world is digital and you don't have to actually send powder in the mail.
Yeah, it's pretty scary. Pretty scary.
We should be scared.
Absolutely. So what's next for you?
Well, I have a thing that I did called Flowers in the Attic. It's a prequel to
Oh,
Flowers in the Attic.
yes.
That's coming out. I'm not sure when. I don't know. I went to Romania to shoot that, and interesting the way that people are shooting movies today because of the protocols that have to be followed on the sets. That's an eye opener too to see. It's a whole different way of shooting film now. You have to be in pods and zones. You're always wearing face masks and gloves and can't touch anybody. It's very difficult to have a conversation because you got to be 6 feet away from people. It's a whole new world out there in the world of filmmaking.
Yes, it is. Well, I really appreciate the time. Thank you so much.
Sure, absolutely.
Pleasure to meet you, Harry.